Hello and welcome back. In this video, we'll be building out our model core class. So if we create a new file, we do model.core.php. Okay, so now we need to actually instantiate the class, or define the class. So I'm just going to open up PHP, and I'm going to say class model, and then I'm going to create some protected variables. So protected $_DB. And in fact, you know what? I'm gonna put them all in one line. $_table, $_model name, $_soft delete, and we're just gonna set this to false. So what that soft delete will do is we're going to expect there whenever we create a model for there to be a soft delete. And this will either be true or false, where we can delete records, but as a soft delete. So it'd be something like we'd have is deleted, and that would be equal to true or false, or it might be 1 and a 0. I haven't decided exactly how I want to do that yet, but do that. And you know what? We'll also get the column names. And by default, we'll set that equal to an empty array, but we'll actually instantiate that later. So now what we'll do is we'll create a constructor, or create one more public variable, public, and we'll just say $ID. We might need that later. Public function construct. And what we'll do is we'll pass in the table, and then we'll say $this_DB is equal to DB get instance, and then we'll say $this_table is equal to $table, and then we'll say $this, and I think $this ooh, you know what? I'm gonna have to write a bit of code in order to make, because I wanted to originally set the column names right here, but in order for that to work, I'm gonna have to write a function, because we essentially want to get the column names and fields, and we want it to basically be an array. If we go back here to our did I actually do it? Oh, I might have actually done it in my get columns. Grab get table columns. So, oh, I did already do it. Okay. Because it actually sets it as an array, so I don't have to actually change anything. Or I don't have to add that function. Instead, I can say $this underscore name all names is equal to $this underscore DB get table columns for the table. Perfect. And I can actually protect it a little bit more by doing if $table this the underscore DB table this, and then we can not set column, say $this DB. Oop, this needs a underscore. There we go. DB, and then we can do get table columns, and then this table, which we're already. Well, you know what we'll do. $table like so, because we can do that. $table. Okay. And if that doesn't exist, we'll just let it return false like it does by default. Okay. And then what we can do is we're going to write a line of code to get the model name, but we're actually going to expect the model name. It could come in differently, depending on how you write it. So we're going to prepare for that. So $this underscore model name is equal to, and then we're going to str underscore, and we're going to replace that with the space like so, and then that space is going to turn into a string, an empty string. So it will basically make it go from this to that to that. And then we're going to use keywords, and then we're going to replace the underscore with the space and get the table. So if the table comes in as, post underscore ID, or post underscore, we can do like user underscore posts, turns into user posts, like that. And that becomes the model. Because if you remember, in here we do post underscore, and this, now I did the user posts here like that, but I could have done it and named it user underscore posts like so. So what this will do is when we go into actually create the table, and in fact we're going to pass in $sign fields as well into our constructor, and we're going to say that we want to save the table, so $this db underscore db, and then save table, and then we're going to say table and fields. So we'll be able to pass those fields in through whenever we create that. And so this will update or create or save the table. Now, if you remember, and in fact, we can actually get rid of this. Well, you know what? It will, if it doesn't exist, it's just going to return false, so no need to get rid of that. But that's going to be our constructor. It was kind of it's kind of like hard to understand exactly, but essentially we don't want to call our database on itself. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to just be returning a bunch of functions. And so what we can do is we'll just start calling all of our functions. So we can do a public function find, and we'll just pass in the params, and then what we'll do is this will always return the result, so we can just return $this underscore db find, and then this table params like so. Public function find first, and again we just do the same thing. Okay. Now I also want to create a save, which in order to do that, let's create our update, delete, and read, or update, insert, delete, all that. And so update, and then our update will just take an ID in fields, and then do the same thing for delete, like so. Okay, now I want to create a save method, which will know if we're going to be updating or deleting. So public function save. And so in the save function, we're actually not going to take any parameters. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say that for each $sign this, and then underscore column names as column, we're simply going to, well, we're going to check and see, well, you know what? This line of code it would be redundant. So we can just say if and then property underscore exists, $sign this, ID, and $sign this. ID does not equal an empty string, then we know that we're updating. And we'll update on this ID, and we're not going to sanitize because this does it for us. Instead, we're going to say $sign yes, which this field's coming as an empty array, so you know what, it'd be easier just to pass fields in. Be easier just to pass that in. And then else we know that we're insert. Okay. So that's what that save method does. And essentially this is all we're doing for find, insert, update, delete. Now, we could also, we might want to run just unfeathered queries without doing this insert, update, delete stuff. So I'm just going to create a public function query, return like that. I may also want to do a find by ID, public function find by ID. We'll pass in an ID, and then we'll just do it like this. So we'll create our condition string. Hold on. So we'll find first, and then we'll create a conditions, and then we'll pass in this $sign ID. Well, we don't know if the ID is going to be. We don't know what identifier we want to use. So what we can do is we can pass in $sign identifier. So, and then $sign ID. So we can do $sign identifier. And we could have set this equal to an array too. And this actually needs to be an array because if you remember, we did this params and this condition. So what we'll do is we'll create a condition and then $sign identifier, like so. So if you remember, we have the params. Sorry, yeah, I named that wrong. Should be params. And we're not going to use a condition for this, so there's no con. And then we're going to bind that by the ID. So, okay. So that's how we did that. If you remember, we had the params, and this params is an array, and then we had an array of for bind, and then we had this entire condition set into an array. And so conditions is an array. For this params an identifier. So conditions is an array. This params an identifier here. And then outside, the second item in this array becomes bind. So in here, because we're only passing one array, this bind is still the second condition. And so we can actually verify that this works, and we do need to extend this to the DB. Believe actually no, technically I don't need to extend this to the DB because we're referencing the get instance. But what I can do is say that it's say $sign model listen post is equal to, let's say we'll say new model, and then we'll pass in the posts table, and then our params here, which let me just do this real quick. Posts. Okay. So if we take a look, I'm just gonna do this and say that get rid of this. We'll say fields, we'll set that equal to this post underscore ID. And then this will have the primary key. We'll say this is an int, and it'll auto incremented. And then we'll do post underscore name, and that'll just be varchar, not null. Post description, that'll be text. Post dates. Post status. And we'll add a views because it's not currently in there. Add an image. Post content. So this should, in theory, add a few, which is what we want. And then what we can do is we can say $post, and then we'll find by ID, and then what we'll do is find by ID takes in 2, which if we go back here, scroll down to our find by ID, it takes that identifier and then the ID. So our identifier would be post E, and we'll take in the first item, or the first ID. So if this works, nothing in this table should change other than the actual fields. So if we concat method table, oh, that's because it's private. So let's just go to the table real quick. Table exists. We're just going to change this to public. function fresh. For each loop must be type of objects. Would be an array. Hold on. Line 164. For each. Oh, that's because I removed the. I do need to. Okay, hold on. That's because we're passing in this post ID find by ID. So we actually need to find first. And then our find first method here calls this table params. So what we're currently passing in should be the params, this conditions and params. So if we just copy this, we go back a few. So you'll remember that we have this fields and then conditions con params. For some reason it's saying that this is not an array. So let's try and rewrite this. So our conditions. So we'll say conditions is equal to an array here. And then in our array, we'll use this as our params. And then we'll set that equal to $sign identifier. Oh, param could actually be like that. And then we'll step outside that array and we'll say bind by the ID. I think that's what the problem was. And we'll just save that and see if this works now, which it does. Perfect. So if you notice, you'll actually see that this added those different things. It didn't change anything. So we did go back and we fixed that. And that's what that find first method does. So now if we were to go and we can change this identifier to be anything that's unique. So if we did this find by ID and this was we can find the ID by anything. Ooh, you know what? This method should not use find first. This method should just use find. Because let's say that we wanted to grab a whole bunch of posts by ID, but we wanted to use the user ID instead of just the instead of the post ID. Now this should still work, which it does. But let's say that we wanted to use this for the user or the author. I think it was post underscore author. And this author might have a whole bunch of posts. And let's say we wanted to grab all of them. Well, using the find first would not be able to get all of them. Instead, it would only get one. And so that's a problem. So that's why we're actually using the find instead of find first on that. Now we can copy and paste this function here. And we can do find by ID, but we can do find first by ID, and then just use the find first method here. So then we can get the find first by ID and find by ID. So that way we can find by ID either way. So we have that save, we have the update, we have the delete, find first, find by ID. Now we could we could create a few more functions, but honestly, I think this is good enough for our base model and like what we're doing in this application. So that's going to be it for this video. But before I end the video, I'm just going to pull up our the the GitHub, and I'm just going to say added functionality for the MVC. In fact, I think this will basically complete the basic MVC, and in the next episodes, we're going to start building out modules. And then I don't really care what I put there. Just put stuff. Okay. Push that. So if you remember in one of the previous videos, I had you build out or create this modules folder. So inside this modules folder, we're going to create some really cool things where we can basically create like basically they're going to be hop drop plugins that we can add to these modules. So like we'll create a form plugin that will basically allow us to create forms using PHP. And what I mean is you would do something like $ this or $ form is equal to new form, and then you can chain on like $form, add field, stuff like that. And that's one of the hot drop modules I was planning on adding. I was planning on adding a security module, an email module, a sessions module, upload module, a cookie module, an API module. I was even planning on adding a cPanel API module to basically integrate cPanel into our application. And the way that these modules are intended to be used is the space framework. We don't really want it to be a super heavy framework. So essentially what we would do with the modules is we would just add the modules we want, and it would sort of be like an on-demand plugin type of thing where it would run the code and then we would be able to use that code at any point. Because if you remember in our bootstrap file, we actually added this modules. So anytime anything with a module with the class.module.php, it will actually be auto included into our code so we can use it on demand. So that means if we were to create in fact, we'll create a really easy module in the next video just so I can show you how it works. But essentially, we just want to be able to add our on-demand code like that. So this has been our model video, and we could go through and create some models, but we don't need that because once we finish our modules, I'm going to be creating another series. We're actually going to use this MVC framework to build out a cool CMS application, which will be in another playlist. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.